All right, everybody, we've got a short report on Palantir. This short report was released yesterday, right before the AIP conference. The AIP conference was a big deal for Palantir investors, particularly because it was important to validate that what they're doing with artificial intelligence is real. It's serious, it has exponential nature, and if it can be scaled across a variety of different industries and organizations, then the entire world can become more, better, efficient, effective, etc. because of something like Palantir software. The client presentations we saw yesterday were really important. I did a live stream. It's timestamped. I'll leave the link in the description. I would highly recommend watching all of them. JD Power was one of my favorites, followed by Cisco and then the Cleveland Clinic. The people that were talking, leaders of large technology organizations, hospitals, healthcare institutions, were explaining the revolutionary nature of what AIP has done for their business. This short report came a couple of hours before the conference started, and I think it released on the day of the conference because it was intentional to try to capitalize on some of the momentum and just the overall awareness that Palantir was getting yesterday to be able to counteract it with a narrative. So we're going to go through the psychology and the mindset behind this short report and why it came out. One thing I will say is that it is paywalled, and that matters a lot. I did not pay the $64 for the short report. If anyone did pay that, feel free to send it to me if you want, but I don't even think paying for it is necessary given the stuff I've seen from the person who wrote the report, given the financial incentives of how they're kind of framing the report, and given the overall lack of ignorance this person has for the report. I just didn't think paying $64 was worth it and basically getting them to win by charging for a short report that honestly is kind of ridiculous. Okay, so this is written by a guy called Edwin Dorsey. He runs a newsletter called The Bear Cave, and they expose bad companies. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're doing great research exposing companies that are doing fraudulent things, you should absolutely expose them. I mean, that is a good thing. It's better for investors to know about that. He has recently decided to say that there is a massive problem at Palantir. And so let's read through a little bit of what he says first, and then we'll address some of the issues, and then we'll keep going from there. Palantir Technologies built software for government agencies and large businesses to effectively integrate their data, decisions, and operations at scale. The company, co-founded by Peter Thiel and backed by the CIA, is something of a black box and is up 130% this year on intense retail enthusiasm over the company's purported AI capabilities. Already, right there, yes, it is up 130%. Is it something of a black box? Maybe to a lot of people, but for those who understand Palantir, it's not. Ask Jim Simmons from Renaissance Technologies, one of the greatest mathematicians and investors of all time, if it's a black box to him. Ask Stanley Druckenmiller, one of the greatest investors of all time, if it's a black box to him. Now, intense retail enthusiasm. Yes, Palantir has a strong retail community. Two arguments here. Number one, I don't think the stock is up 130% just because of retail. I think something like C3 AI that has a very small float, only 104 million shares outstanding, and is up 300% in a month is up because of retail, and obviously AI in the ticker, right? All of those factors led to it. Palantir has one of the smartest retail communities from my understanding, and I've done, videos kind of explaining why that's the case. But number two, it's like this stock is 2 billion shares outstanding. You don't get it to move 130% unless you have big players loading up on the stock. Is it going to move a little bit because of retail? Sure. But it doesn't go up 130%. There were days Palantir was up almost 20-30% within a day or within a day and a half. That doesn't happen unless there are very big purchases, and there's not that many retail investors that can buy 3-4 million shares at a time. Kathy Wood has purchased 5.3 million shares in the $9-10 range, right? So institutions like her and the influence that she has on other institutional investors that want exposure to growth have likely capitalized on why the stock is up. The Bear Cave believes Palantir is an AI imposter engaging in spurious games to inflate its books and obfuscate its less sexy role as an overhyped data consultant. So we'll talk about that, but that is the overarching claim. That's why I didn't pay for this, because I'm not paying for something that calls Palantir an AI imposter. I'm just not doing that. When you've got people like CodeStrap that are in the industry that we all know in the Palantir community and are really explaining to us, right? He was a VP of technology at an ed tech company managing their entire services and growth before he moved on to work at PwC as basically a Foundry Palantir consultant there to be able to implement Foundry in other organizations. I trust CodeStrap, who's been in tech for the past 30 years, about if Palantir is a fraud or not. And by the way, he has his concerns about Palantir, but when it comes to the tech, there are very little concerns because he believes it's the real deal, which is why he even took that job in the first place to try to get Palantir software everywhere in the world. So I'm going to believe him over a dude that is having a paywall on a Substack article calling Palantir an AI imposter. I'm just not paying for that. The retail investor hype around Palantir is hard to miss. One Palantir investor launched Palantir Bullets. Shout out to Arnie. If you're not subscribed to PalantirBullets.com, this newsletter, I don't know how many thousands of people it goes out to, they now know about Palantir Bullets. So that's a big W for Arnie. A newsletter created to provide investors with knowledge and tools to spot asymmetries between narrative and reality on Palantir. Another investor promotes a Discord server where nearly 1,000 investors share Palantir-focused memes and stock charts. That's like a lot of stock communities. They have a Discord server. I don't know why that's the biggest deal in the world. The Motley Fool recently published an article titled "Why Palantir's Latest AI Initiatives Make It a Screaming Buy." I don't really care. That's the Motley Fool. And Kathy Wood has been buying Palantir shares in 3 of her ARK Invest funds. He conveniently leaves out she sold out of it a year ago, liquidated 37 million shares. So it's not just like, oh, she's buying it, because his implication is like, oh, if Kathy's in it, then it's a retail meme, blah, 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 blah. She sold it. She was out of it. She lost 400 milli, almost half a billy, no gene, know what I'm talking about, on Palantir, and she's back, and maybe she's back for a reason, which was conveniently left out for why she might come back. Perhaps nowhere is it that retail investor enthusiasm better captured than r/Palantir, a subreddit with over 47,000 members that speculate around Palantir stock. One top comment on the recent thread praises Palantir CEO and reads, "I can't believe I'm back in the green. I invested at 35, kept averaging down to 13.76. I never sold because I trusted in Daddy Carp." That's epic that this is on this newsletter. "Every word he said on earnings call renewed my vigor for investing. I cannot wait for Palantir to hit 100 a share." I have no idea what's wrong with that. Everyone bought a lot of stocks in 2021 at high valuations. That's everyone. The biggest investors in the world, BlackRock, Vanguard, all these guys bought them stuff. You DCA if you believe there's a long-term narrative and don't cut your losses, and this guy successfully DCA'd from 35 to 13.76, and now he's in the green. I don't know what's so wrong about that. Cannot wait for Palantir to hit $100 a share. I don't know what's wrong with that either. I think in the next 5-10 years, it can hit 100 share, maybe earlier than that. We have no idea, but to assume it can't hit $100 given all the sort of, overarching thesis we have about the company, I just don't think it's wrong for someone to be able to say that, especially if institutional investors also say that. Palantir management has done nothing to temper recent investor enthusiasm. In fact, AI was mentioned 68 times on the company's Q1 May 23 conference call, up from 17 mentions on the Q4 call and just 6 mentions on the Q1 2022 call. Palantir has been working with AI and machine learning for a very long time. ChatGPT made AI mainstream. The company's been working on AI for a long time, but now is the moment to capitalize on it. And so this can go in 2 directions. Either you're capitalizing in a fraudulent way to kind of just like, smoke and mirrors investors to get you to invest in the company, or you're capitalizing it on a way that's like, oh, this is the moment I'm going to go all in, and this is what I'm going to base the trajectory of my company off of, because this is what not only the world needs, it's what the market needs, but also what our customers need. I believe the way we'll go is the latter for Palantir because of AIP. And this guy drops the short report before even linking to the conference, which just shows the disingenuous nature of the short report. Because if you watch the conference and you did any level of due diligence on the actual technology, which means you have to read articles, you have to watch interviews of people like CodeStrap and Sachin that have been in the industry, you've got to do actual due diligence to see if it's the real deal or not. You can say there's a sales risk, there's an execution risk, stock-based compensation. Those are all super valid. But to say it's an AI imposter fraud and that mentioning AI 68 times was a bad thing to do when they're getting, and the words of Carp, unprecedented demand. Even he said it on the Bloomberg interview yesterday. They're calling inbound people. They're getting calls at Palantir for this product. I think that's just, it's not reasonable at the end of the day. It's just absolutely not reasonable to be able to claim that. And last month in his letter to shareholders, Mr. Karp used a hazardous assortment of jargon and buzzwords to describe Palantir's growth opportunities, writing, in part, "It has now become increasingly apparent that a platform that combines the capabilities of a foundational software architecture with those of the latest large language models is essential in order for the models to evolve into something of transformational value for large organizations." I have no idea why that is a haphazard assortment of jargon and buzzwords. Let's read it again. "It has now become increasingly apparent." That means it is clear. What, do you not like the word apparent? Can you not fucking read? Or do you have a 3rd grade vocabulary or something? "That a platform that combines the capabilities of a foundational software architecture," that just means the software is architected as the foundation of your enterprise. Does he not like the word architecture? Does, what's going on here? "With those of the latest large language models, LLMs," that's important because in order for AI to drive any value, LLMs have to be trained on the AI. That's how ChatGPT and Bard even function in the first place. Palantir has a unique differentiated way of training those models that has security, guardrails, auditability, et cetera, proprietary data. So, you kind of have to mention LLMs. "Is essential in order for the models to evolve into something of transformational value for large organizations." What part of that sentence? It's to evolve into creating value. That is, what did he not like the word transformational? Did he want to say very strong value? It's like, no, it's transformational value for large organizations. Alex Karp also has a PhD in philosophy, so he's going to speak a little bit more intellectually than most people because he studied this shit academically. Is that your bear case for Palantir? Because all right, that's fine. "The bear cave believes that Palantir's story is much less than meets the eye and that the company is a glorified consulting masquerading as an AI leader aided by superior transactions to inflate the company's financial profiles." This post is for paid subscribers. I'm not paying for it. All right, so a couple of concerns. Let's break down some other things that I want to talk about for why the short report is bad. First of all, top level theory. you're charging $64 for a Substack article. Stripe is going to take a 10% fee off that, and Substack is going to take a 10% fee on that. So think about this. You're charging $64 for a Substack article for your short report. If you were actually short Palantir, if you actually believe it's an AI imposter masquerading as some revolutionary company, well, you should short it. We don't have any idea if this guy's short, because if you're not short, this is just another stupid Seeking Alpha bad article. I mean, like, this is not really a short report in that case. If you are short the company, then you should want this information, especially an information that shows a really bearish argument about Palantir, to proliferate and permeate across the internet, you know, the FinTwit community, the YouTube community, the finance community, so that people can sell the stock because they're like, holy crap, this is a Ponzi scheme. But you don't. You want people to pay for it, which means this is a grift. You want people to pay $64 so that they can access your research, even though you don't get the benefit of that research outside of the transactional value from that $64. Because if you did get the benefit of that research, you would open source it and let the stock tank based on the nature of the research. If the research that's good, people are going to retweet it. It's going to spread if it's that good, especially you already have 50,000 subscribers on the newsletter and 100,000 Twitter followers. I mean, you got the audience. All you got to do is give the juice for the audience to squeeze. This is what Hindenburg does. Hindenburg is a notorious short seller of companies, and whenever they release a report, they release everything because they have massive short positions, and they will make billions, if not, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, given how big their short is, on the downside of the stock. They expected Square to go down around 70%. Square has gone down like maybe 10% after their short report because the short report was horrible. So they messed up on that one. They made a lot of money on Adani Group. Adani Group decreased in value, but the only way to do that is if the information is out there. The problem is if the short report is bad, in the example of Square, and people are like, this is ridiculous, what are you talking about? The stock's not going to drop, and you're going to get screwed on that short because eventually the stock goes up. You have to cover that short. So I think on a top level, the short report is absolute nonsense, and that's why I didn't pay for it, because if you want people to pay for your research, it doesn't mean you actually have an incentive to get the stock price to go down, which is the whole nature of a short report, or else you would let the information go out there so that everyone can get it. And because you didn't do that, it seems like this is just a grift and you just want the money. Second point that I want to talk about, masquerading as a consulting firm. He's right about this. Palantir is a consulting firm. The problem is if you listen to AIP, and I have some quotes from some of the people that were there. Cisco, director of engineering, says, we trust Palantir. JD says, ChatGPT is useless for our LLMs, which is why we need to create an integrated solution with Palantir. Cleveland Clinic says we need a partner, not an existing solution. Panasonic says Palantir actually listens to us, which is why we like working with them. Partnerships in the context of transformational technology is why Palantir is so good. Yes, they consult with organizations, but a consulting firm doesn't have margins of 80 to 82%. So the software that comes in the result of closing of the deal after that consultation is a lot of money. The concern here should be, can that consulting be scaled? And I have a couple of reasons why I think it can be scaled, and it's actually not that complicated as people think, but the idea that it's just a consulting firm is ridiculous. Consulting firms are Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, people that graduate fancy universities and then just go work there and think and make presentations and PowerPoints all day. That's what a consulting firm does. And they're not that special. The margins aren't that interesting. I mean, they're an agency. Palantir's a software company. These guys have IL level 6 security clearance. They're working in Ukraine to stop Russia from invading. The idea that they are just a consulting firm because they consult with clients versus sell them an out-of-the-box solution that they can download immediately is insane. Now, out-of-the-box solutions can scale really quickly, i.e. Snowflake, but the value of them is brought into question. And I believe with Palantir, if you're actually working with a company, as Karp says, you're getting value. And the people, the really heads of directors of these multi-billion-dollar companies, Cisco's a $200 billion company, Jacobs is a $14 billion company. These companies are saying, we could not work within all the regulatory environments we work with all the applications we have to deploy across all these different cloud computing platforms we work with, unless we had a platform that could actually enable us to do this at scale in a way that listened to our problems, suggested solutions, and worked with us to build these things. That's why the consulting firm narrative to me is not bad. Now, two quick subpoints on this consulting point narrative. Number one, how does it scale? Network effects. The more you consult with an organization, the more that organization is able to recommend you to other organizations. So if you're a company and you've used Palantir for the past 5 years, which is basically what Karp said in the interview yesterday with Bloomberg, he said our clients are singing our song. They're telling other people about our song because if you work with us for 18 months and then we charge you because after those 18 months we consulted with you and we've given you a really good product roadmap, and now you're like, all right, I want to pay for you, that organization is just going to be way more friendly to recommend you to another organization saying Palantir actually work with us. 6 people from 6 very big companies came on stage yesterday, took precious time out of their life to stand on a stage for 20 minutes and talk about why Palantir is the shit. Barely any upside for the company, tons of upside for Palantir in terms of the marketing costs. So, I mean, when you would do that, I think the network effects are can become pretty exponential from there, especially when the big guys like AT&T, Verizon, they're using Palantir. Well, T-Mobile, we've got to look at, well, what does Palantir do, right? All these organizations that want to become more effective and efficient with AI, if they're seeing Cisco, JD, Cleveland Clinic, Panasonic, Jacobs use them, why aren't we using them becomes the question. The next argument outside of this consulting firm is the expanding model. So Jacobs has been a company Palantir's worked with since March 2022. They upsold them on AIP on top of Foundry because they already built them an integrated solution because they consulted with them for so long that they were like, hey, you guys want to try this? And they were like, well, you built all this shit for us. Can you build something else for us? And they're like, yeah, try this out. And then boom, you now have a new contract, a new partnership, which Palantir and Jacobs just announced a couple of days ago, because of the fact that you were able to consult with them in the past, build them a very specific solution, that, by the way, you have a monopoly on because no one can build that fucking solution. That is the whole 0 to 1 concept around Palantir. You don't have competition after you build that type of solution because you actually took the time to sit down and talk with the client. And as a result of that, you can upsell them on more stuff, which is really important on the consulting point aspect. All right. Last point I want to talk about on why this short report is really just not that strong is the thing they say at the end, which is that they are a fraud AI imposter and that retail enthusiasm is just purporting the AI capabilities. 2 things here. Number 1, the retail community in Palantir is the smartest retail community in the world. I will say that again. Outside of Tesla, the retail community for Palantir is the smartest community in the world. There are people that have worked in data, analytics. They've worked on the front lines. They've worked in the oil and gas industry. There's just so many people that I can keep naming that truly understand this product and have done the due diligence themselves because they have massive positions. I mean, Sachin, who's a VP and director of funds in Malaysia, he's 101% in Palantir. We're talking 7 figures in Palantir. He's not doing that because he hasn't done his research, because he hasn't talked to people, because he hasn't seen the transformational nature of the product. Does he have concerns? Sure. Every investor should have concerns. Execution, stock-based comp, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, we're investing in a revolutionary technology that we believe will be able to overcome all of those overarching concerns because the product is the product and sales can be fixed. And so I think the Palantir community is really one of the smartest communities in the world, which is why that retail enthusiasm exists. Having said that, that is what enables me to believe that this AI mania is, yes, a hype cycle, and a lot of stocks are up probably artificially on that, and maybe Palantir does get a pullback because, some of that mania dies down. But the question becomes, and this is where real long-term returns happens, is the AI stuff legit for a company? For NVIDIA, yes, legit. For Tesla, yes, legit. For C3 AI, I don't know if it's that legit. For Palantir, I think it's legit. And AIP was very important yesterday, which is why it's so weird that the short report came out before AIP, which is another reason for the grift, right? Just capitalizing on the attention, not actually looking to because how do you release a short report and call in an AI imposter without watching a conference that is called AIP? Like, if anything, that conference should validate that, oh, this is bullshit. This technology is nonsense. This AI is like, they're masquerading. But instead of just watching the conference, like you could have released the short report a day later and just watched it for a couple of hours and try and validated your thesis. You were scared because you knew if they released anything that was interesting, anything important, anything that actually kind of made sense and validated that this AI hype might be real for Palantir, might not just be smoke and mirrors, then your short report would go to shit and no one would pay your $64. And so I think that if you watch AIP, if you understand what's going on, if you listen to Karp speak about this, Russia, Ukraine, all of the different clients they work with, there is just too much momentum validating that this is a real thing. Now we've got to see if they can grow, because 18% year-over-year growth I still think is not going to be enough for Wall Street to really respect the stock. And if AI demand is that big, then Palantir should be able to grow. But if they do, then this short report is nonsense and it's just trying to capitalize on attention, especially because they did no due diligence on the nature of what Palantir actually is. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Short report on Palantir. It does mean Palantir is becoming a more popular company as random people are releasing short reports and trying to capitalize on the downside of getting fear to pay for whatever subscription they're trying to pay for. By the way, Substack and Stripe are going to take a percentage out of that $64, so it's not even going to be $64. He would have made a lot more money if he was short and the short report was good and the stock fell, but it doesn't seem like he's doing that. These are my thoughts on the short report. Let me know what you guys think, and yeah, do you think there's any validity to this short report? And if you do think there is, please let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for listening and watching. I'll see you in the next one.